I'd like to welcome everyone here this afternoon to our final meeting of the Fall Honors Lecture Series. My name is Dr. Philip Phillips, and I'm the Associate Dean of the University Honors College. And I'm very pleased to introduce two speakers today, both students who have recently completed their honors theses and successfully defended them. Our first speaker is Joanne Tan, and our second speaker will be Ricky Grieves. So I'll introduce our first speaker and give her the opportunity to tell you about her project and respond to any questions and comments that you might have. And then I'll introduce our second speaker. So our first speaker is Joanne Tan, a biology, general physiology major with a minor in math. She's a recipient of the Paul Martin Scholarship, the Ingram Montgomery Scholarship, and the Kevin Driver Memorial Scholarship. She also received a Eureka grant to support her thesis, The Effects of Buildups on Leg, Foot Pain, and Physical Activity Level, written under the direction of Dr. Sandra Stevens in the Health and Human Performance Department. Her future plans include an internship on water treadmill research and the pursuit of an advanced degree in physical therapy. Please join me in welcoming Joanne.
Okay, let's see if this is working. All right, so my thesis is called The Effects of Buildups on Leg or Foot Pain and Physical Activity Level. And okay, so before I get started on my thesis, I just want you to imagine you're driving this car and you're just cruising down the road, minding your own business, and then suddenly that happens. What would you do? Well, if you're like me and know nothing about cars, I would call somebody and get somebody else to fix it. Or, you know, if you're a handyman, then you could probably do it yourself. But the point is, no matter what choice you made, you just want to get the car fixed so you can move on with your day. All right, so let's change the scenario a bit. And instead of thinking about cars, let's look at our body. Now let's pretend that you have back pain, hip pain, or foot pain. What would you do? Some people get pain medication, some people need surgery, some people go to the doctor, physical therapy, or customized orthotics. Well, basically, you just want to look for treatments to help alleviate our pain. But unfortunately, if you're like most people, getting this treatment can be an issue because they're expensive. So just to give you an idea of how I got interested in my thesis project, I just want to share with you briefly about my experience with pain. In high school, I was very active. I did volleyball, basketball, cross country, and track. And in my junior year in high school, I had a really bad sprain with my hip, and I was on crutches for about 2 or 3 months. And ever since then, my leg has not been the same. I could walk from one building to the next, and that would just take 5 minutes, and my whole leg would just ache like crazy. And I've been looking for tons of solutions. Like I've been to different doctors, like a podiatrist, orthopedic doctors. I took an X-ray and MRI to hopefully figure out what is wrong with my leg. And I took pain medication. I did all of this and nothing was working, and I spent so much time, so much money in trying to look for a solution, and nothing was working. And I thought at one point that I just basically have to live with my pain for the rest of my life. And about a year and a half ago, I was just at my neighbor's house, just casually talking to her, and I briefly mentioned about my pain to her. And then she said to me, "Joanne, just let me take you to a place to meet somebody and see if he could help." At first, I didn't want to go because I spent so much time looking for a solution and I was just sick of it. But since I didn't want to be rude, I just went with her anyways. So she took me to Flex Your Shoes, which is a really small and very simple shoe store in Franklin, Tennessee. And I'll be honest, when I first walked in, I was like, okay, what in the world am I doing here? Because this is for like old people. So, but I went in and I met Mr. Grady, who is the person that my neighbor wanted me to meet. and he is the sweetest man in the world. He has been selling shoes for about 60 years, and he made customized orthotics for about 60 years as well. So I talked to him, and I told him about my leg pain, and after I was done talking, he asked me to walk over a foot stamp, which is this thing over here. And what it does is it will give me a footprint, and that's my feet right there. And you can see that I put a lot of pressure on the outside of my foot. And Mr. Grady told me, Joanne, you're walking out like this instead of straight like this, so I think that's what's causing your foot pain. So after he was done talking, he was gone for a few minutes, and I guess he just went to the back of the room in his secret laboratory or something. So he was gone, and when he came back, he brought out a new pair of shoes with all the support on there. There's the metatarsal pad, the arch support, the heel cushion, and the lateral wedge. And he told me that this part over here is going to help me the most because it's going to lift me up back to balance and help me walk more stable. And basically, the whole idea of the build-ups is to help my body back to balance, just like how you would fix a flat tire on the car. You want to fix it so it will work properly, right? And I will say this: at first, I was really skeptical of the build-ups because it was just a piece of foam in my shoes. So I wasn't sure if it's going to work or not. But I do want to say this: after a few weeks, after I had the build-up, my family and I went on vacation, and we did a lot of walking. And I remember my sister Ruth said to me, Joanne, this is the first time I haven't heard you complain about your leg at all. And she was right. For the first time in 3 years, I did not think about my pain. And I think that was when I realized that, oh my goodness, this is something that could actually help me with my leg pain. And it did. Ever since then, my leg feels so much better. And not only that, I've been so much more active than ever. I did a few 5K since then. I've been doing a lot of hiking. I can play sports again with no problem. And I've definitely been working out more. And I do feel much healthier today than I did a year and a half ago before I had the build-up. So, and this made me wonder, what about other people with leg pain? Would the build-up help them as much as it helped me? So that was my whole purpose of my research. I wanted to know whether the build-up decreased pains in other people, and if so, does it increase physical activity level? So what I did was I started to recruit participants who met the criteria, and one of the criteria is to make sure they're not in any other treatment so that we would know that the build-up is the main reason for the decrease in pain or the increase in physical activity level. And once I got all my participants, I asked them to fill a pre-test pain survey, which is the VAS, and a pre-test activity survey, which is the IPAQ right there. So what they are is the VAS, which is on the left side. So I will basically ask the participant to rate their pain and draw a line on here. And basically the right side being as painful as it is, and the left side being no pain at all. And the IPAQ, which is the activity survey, so it's just a simple questionnaire to see how active they are. And one simple question is, on the last 7 days, how many days did you do vigorous activity like heavy lifting, digging, and fast bicycling? So they would just write down how many days and how many minutes and stuff like that. So once they did all of that, we will meet at Fletcher Shoes with the shoes that they wanted to build up. And Mr. Gray would just analyze their feet, check their footprint, check their shoes to make sure they fit correctly and make sure it's not too worn out or too old. And once everything is okay, Mr. Gray would do the build-ups in the shoes. And so here are just some pictures with Mr. Grady and the participants. So there's Mr. Grady, and in the middle, you can see the participant is just walking over the footstep, just like what I did before. And there's Mr. Gray just talking to the participant about their foot condition. And here's Mr. Gray in his secret laboratory making the build-ups. And this is the participant trying out their shoes with the build-ups. And the last picture right here is my favorite because he's giving a thumbs up, so that means he likes it, so that's good. So once all the participants have their build-ups, I asked them to wear the shoes as long and as much as they can. And if they feel any discomfort or feel any pain, they can go back to Mr. Grady, get it readjusted for free. And then after 4 weeks, we'll meet again. And then I'll ask them to fill out the same pain survey and the same activity survey. So in this section, I'm going to talk about my result. And so here is just a graph of all the participants and with the pain level. And everything in the blue is the pre-test data, and the red is the post-test data. So you can see that most of the participants experience a decrease in pain, and maybe one has an increase in pain, and some stays about the same. But the pattern here, you can see that most of them experience a decrease in pain. However, if you look at the activity level, there's really not much of a pattern you could see. Some experience an increase in the activity level, some have a decrease in the activity level, and some stays about the same. So, and if we look on average, this is the pain level right here, and you can see that there's a huge difference with the pre-test and the post-test, so that's great. However, in the activity level though, even though you can see there's a slight increase there, it's still not significant enough to say that, hey, there's a significant increase between the pre and the post-test activity level. So, and I think some factors that plays into the activity level is that 4 weeks is a short amount of time. If you're not active in the first place, it's kind of hard to change that habit in just 4 weeks. Even some participants told me that if they were given a longer period of time, they feel that they could have done more with a longer period of time. So, and another factor is it was just bad timing for them. Some students are just too busy studying for their final exam, so they weren't able to get enough exercising time in, or some people just, they're just busy overall. And also, depending on the type of work that they do, some people are required to sit in front of a computer all day, so they can't get in exercising time. Or some people, they would constantly move around, so that could explain the increase in the activity level. These are just some different factors that might play into the activity level. And that brings up the next point. Sometimes being pain-free is not enough to motivate people to become more active. If you're pain-free but not active, you're still considered as unhealthy. And just some simple solution like, those fitness apps on your iPhones or your Android. And one example is called the Zombie Run. And Martin actually did his thesis on this. And basically what it is when you go on the run, you put on this fitness app, and basically you pretend that you're being chased by a zombie, and that's supposed to make you run faster and further. And it's very interesting. So if you guys want to check it out, it's in the honors library. And another factor is just gaining motivation or encouragement from families or friends can make a huge difference, because some people, like me, are too scared of being active again because they're scared that the pain is going to come back. So if you just encourage them or motivate them, that, again, can make a huge difference. And other things like, playing those fitness Wii games or being part of an exercising program could be a great solution to start motivating people. And also, some interesting finding throughout my research is a lot of my participants has been wearing the wrong size shoes. I have one participant that went from a size 13 all the way to the size 15, and I went from a size 7.5 all the way to the size 8.5. So I wonder if my participant, if they just have the right size shoes with no build-ups in them, would that automatically decrease their pain? So that's just an interesting thought that I had. And okay, in this section, what I did was basically I'll write down the comments that my participant have before they have the build-up, so whether how they feel about their pain or whether they're skeptical about the build-ups. So one example is an MTSU student, and she is actually right here in this room. Where are you, Kelly? She's right there. So she was actually one of my participants, and she told me that before before the buildup, her feet would swell after organic chemistry lab, and whenever it rains or it storms, it would trigger her leg pain. And after, when she had the buildup, she told me her feet doesn't hurt anymore, there's less pain whenever it rains, and this is the most exciting part for me. She's able to run a 7-minute and 30-second mile and no pain afterwards. So that was very exciting. And she does feel more motivated to work out, and she wants to get build-ups in other shoes as well. And another example is, this is a retired man, and he is overweight, and he's been having foot and arch pain. And after he has a build-up, he told me that his feet felt great, the pain is definitely gone, and he could tell the difference. And he felt that he could do more things and feel more motivated in terms of working out and being more active. And he also wanted to get another pair of shoes from Mr. Grady with the build-ups in them. So this is really exciting news because obesity is an issue. And if something as simple as a build-up could motivate somebody to be more active, that is going to prolong his life. And if more people know about this, that could potentially prolong more people's lives too. So I think that's great news right there. And here are just some other examples, but I think since I'm kind of limited on time, I'm gonna go ahead and skip through this. However, I did want to talk about this. I asked all my participants, would you recommend the build-up to other people? All of them said definitely yes. And that is so exciting for me because something as simple and as cheap as a build-up could make such a huge difference in somebody's leg pain. And I wish I knew about this sooner and save all that time and save all that money that I spent before. And it's just a shame that Mr. Grady is probably the only one that I know that does something like this. And he's going to retire soon, and he's about to turn about 80 next year. So, and I don't think anyone else is going to take over after him. And I feel that this should not be a lost skill. So if any of you guys are interested in working with him, just come talk to me after class. I would love to talk to you more about it. And here's here's the picture at my thesis defense. And I want to say that I'm so grateful for the people at my committee. And here are the people that I want to acknowledge. Dr. Stevens, who is my thesis advisor, she has been fantastic and so supportive of me, and she has been so patient and been such a great cheerleader. And Dr. Phillip, thank you for giving me all this great advice on how to make my thesis successful. And I want to thank Ms. Marcia, who is sitting right there. And I want to thank Ms. Janine. They have helped me proofread the thousands of drafts that I've done the past year, and I want to thank them for that. And of course, I want to thank my neighbor who brought me to Mr. Grady in the first place. If it weren't for her, I probably would still be in pain and probably never met Mr. Grady. And last but not least, I want to dedicate this to Mr. Grady. Because of him, he is the main reason why I'm so excited for physical therapy school, because he has helped me, not only me, but so many other people, and he has made such a huge difference in so many people's lives. And I just can't wait to make a difference in my patients' life and help them with their struggle with pain. So from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank him. I wish he was here. But anyways, all right, that is it. Any questions? Yes.
I have two questions.
Yes.
Question number one, and you don't have to spend a lot of time on this, but when you decided on this topic, was it easy to find a
No.
advisor? Okay.
No.
When we have these thesis workshops and we say some people walk in and it's a snap, that was not your experience. Can you speak briefly to that? And the second thing is, you went to all these doctors, okay?
Yes.
So, wouldn't one of them suggested shoes or build-ups or something?
No. Like,
It just doesn't.
I didn't even know what. I went to a podiatrist, and like he told me my foot was fine, like nothing's going on. So, and I've been dealing with pain for probably 3 years before I found a solution. Like when I was in MTSU, I was miserable. I couldn't even walk without pain. It was that bad. Yes. Nope. Nobody. Yeah. So it was. Like when Mr. Grady brought a new pair of shoes with those simple build-ups in there, I was very skeptical. Like, I thought it was just not going to work. But just after 1 or 2 weeks, I could feel a difference. And that's very surprising. So, I mean, since then, I feel so much better. My tightness is gone. My aching is gone. And I'm definitely working out more and being more active. So it's just really exciting to know something so cheap and so simple as that could make such a big difference. And I just wish more people know about this and more people does something like that. So yeah. And he never been to medical school before, so that's huge.
And your thesis journey.
Oh, okay. So I probably been to like 5 different professors trying to look for like a thesis idea. And it was not until probably, so I started looking for an advisor like first day of school. I did not find one until like late October. So it was really stressful for me, and I thought I was just not gonna get any thesis project done. So, but just keep going at it, work hard, never give up. You'll find it.
About referrals, like you would talk to one
Yes.
person, and then you hit the right person, right?
Exactly. So it's not easy, I'll tell you that.
Other questions?
How much were your build-ups?
It was just $25.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
My job requires me to walk around barefoot for 6 hours at a time, which gives me ankle pain. Would wearing shoes like these in my off time, would that help with that?
Yes, I think so. And one of the concerns that I had about the build-up is like some people would think that wearing orthotics will weaken your foot, and that was actually one of the concerns that I had. And I think the build-ups actually strengthened my foot because when I went barefoot before I had the build-up, like the outside of my foot, it would ache like crazy. It would hurt. But now I noticed that I go barefoot all the time at home. And I noticed that ever since I have the build-up and been wearing them constantly, I'm walking a lot better even when I'm barefoot. So I think it would help you a lot. So if you want his card, come find me after class. I got you. Any other questions? Yes.
What's the difference between a build-up and like a Dr. Scholl's like course?
The build-ups is more customized. So if I go back to, well, it's going to take forever. If you go back to the build-up, it's more customized to every person's feet. The Dr. Scholl's, it's just flat. There's no support in there, and it's like one, what is that word? It's just like one fit for all or something like that. Yeah, what Dr. Phillips said. So, but this one though, like it's more specific to your own feet. So I need a little, like a more emphasis on the lateral ridge because I walk on the outside. So let's say that your foot is flat. So you probably, oh, good grief. You probably need more support on the arch if you have flat feet. So everyone is different. So if you just buy something from a store, that's probably not going to give you the same effect. So it's like a customized orthotics, except it's built right into your shoes and it's much cheaper. So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it just kind of looks like he's cutting up different
Right.
pieces and like building it. Is that kind of like what his process is?
Yes.
He's cutting up like different pieces and kind of building your own customized foot.
Exactly. So if you don't like the way it feels when you first get it, you can always ask him, okay, could you tone it down a little bit on this part, and then he'll do it. So it's very adjustable and it's very very cheap, very simple. So yeah.
So it has to be done in each different pair of shoes.
Yes. Yes.
And then you can move from one shoe to the next.
But if this works out great for you, and if you have a pretty serious bad foot condition, then he will probably recommend a customized orthotics, and he will do that for you, and that way you can kind of move that insole from shoes to shoes, and it will be much more permanent and longer lasting. So this is a good way to actually test out whether or not orthotics is suitable for you. So yeah.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Ricky Grieves is an honors transfer fellow majoring in psychology and minoring in sociology and biology. She wrote her thesis, Cyberbullying, Experiences and Perceptions Among College Students, under the direction of Dr. Gloria Hamilton in the psychology department. Her future plans include pursuing a master's in psychiatric and mental health nursing. Please join me in welcoming Ricky Grieves.
So, as the title indicates, my study was about cyberbullying, experiences and perceptions among college students. Really, one thing that you start to realize very quickly when you do cyberbullying research is that there's no consensus as to what it is, which is pretty problematic because you can't compare any results across studies because maybe they used one very loose definition like anything mean or nasty somebody says to somebody else. And then somebody might have more specific parameters as to what constitutes cyberbullying. And then you add to that just a general kind of public confusion. You know, is it just rude behavior via technology or is it actual bullying? So the purposes of this study were to find out how cyberbullying is defined by college students. Obviously, the definition is a very important step in research, and arriving at one is crucial. And cyberbullying, because it's new, the research is new, and very little of it is actually done with college students, so you may need to define it differently for adults than you would for kids. So that's another thing in order to be able to measure it properly, you have to know how it's defined by the people you're measuring it with. And then to determine the prevalence and investigate qualitative aspects of cyberbullying. So I used a mixed method design. So I used behavioral scales, direct measures of cyberbullying. Have you cyberbullied? Have you been cyberbullied in the past year? And then for those who in the direct measures had endorsed cyberbullying behaviors, there were follow-up questions about the kinds of experiences they were having. To the end of finding a definition, I went ahead and coded the qualitative responses. I specified behaviors as the definition of cyberbullying because unfortunately, if you say define cyberbullying, mostly you're gonna get bullying through technology, which doesn't really shed a lot of light on the topic. So instead, I operationalized it as actual behaviors. And these are the ones cited by most of the participants, or not most of them, but these were the ones that were most often cited by participants. Something with these themes, mostly mean, nasty messages, name calling, threatening. But there was no statistical significance in definitions. I kind of expected there would be more agreement, but this is about as good as it got. And one thing about defining bullying, in traditional bullying, the definition generally includes the elements, the intent to harm, repeated acts over time, and a power imbalance, the acts being perpetrated against somebody that isn't in a good position to defend him or herself. But the thing about cyberbullying, a lot of researchers are using these criteria or some, one or two of them, but there are arguments not to include them in a cyberbullying definition because the thing is, it's not, the dynamics aren't necessarily the same as bullying in person. Intent could be absent, but very much perceived by the person who's receiving messages or been targeted. Repetition isn't really necessary in the sense that one act can be viewed over and over by so many people, and it can feel like repeated acts to the person who's on the receiving end. And then power imbalance is really tricky because The people who may have more advantage in face-to-face have possibly less so. So tech savvy might be a more important factor rather than physical strength or popularity or what have you. So the different nuances that are unique to the cyber world make it a little questionable that these need to be in the cyberbullying definition. And the prevalence in the sample, which was a convenient sample I used in an introductory psychology course of 67 participants, 12% of them endorsed cyberbullying when asked directly, have you cyberbullied or have you been cyberbullied in the past year? And, but when it came to the behavioral scales, 79% endorsed cyberbullying behaviors. So there's a large discrepancy there, which I will return to. And this is an example, or these are some examples of some of the behaviors that were on the behavioral scales in the survey. Spreading a mean rumor to hurt someone or embarrass them, sending multiple derogatory or insulting messages to the same person, sharing a private message to embarrass someone or threatening someone. And so in the light blue, these are people who have engaged in these behaviors at least once over the past year. And then conversely, we have victimization over the past year as well. And again, in the light blue, these are people who had experienced these behaviors at least once in the past year. And this is experiences or really roles by gender group. The sample is much heavier on women, 42 versus 25 men. So it's the percentage of their gender group. There were no men that reported only bullying behaviors. But as you can see, there's the majority reported both bullying and victimization, which is another way in which the cyber dynamics are different than real life, or tend to be, because you can see that it's pretty bidirectional, and there's probably a lot of aggression and revenge in cyberbullying experiences. And because of the methodological difficulties, the ranging definitions, there's also a huge range in reported prevalence. Some as small as 1.5% or as large as 58.4. Mine was very large when indirect measures were used. 91% had endorsed at least one of the behaviors, and in many cases more than one. And then, as I said earlier, only 12% reported cyberbullying in direct measures. So the huge discrepancy in that is really interesting to me, and it's not something I can claim to answer. There are certain possibilities, and I think in examining the difference, it might shed a little light on how cyberbullying is defined by just the general public, especially among adults, and reservations about admitting cyberbullying behaviors. So one thing is that direct measures may just underreport it. There are a number of reasons that adults may not want to admit to cyberbullying. They don't want to be labeled as a bully or victim. They think that bullying is juvenile, and they believe that that basically ends in adolescence. And there's just a lack of solid communication norms. So it could be that people are engaging in behaviors that they think are appropriate and maybe are not so appropriate. And then conversely, it could be that indirect measures are measuring something other than cyberbullying. So that's something to look at in future research to determine, are we missing cyberbullying that's happening, or would indirect measures capture things that aren't not cyberbullying? And of course, just definition-wise, researchers and participants might not consider the same thing cyberbullying. So that's another reason why there could be a discrepancy. And then, of course, future research should address this issue. Do we need direct measures? Do we need indirect? Do we need both? What is going to more fully capture cyberbullying without getting a lot of false alarms and putting attention where we don't need it? And then really focus groups would be great in nailing down the definitions that adults have of cyberbullying. I know in my experience with the surveys, I wanted to ask, but why? Why is this not cyberbullying? And unfortunately, you don't have that luxury, but in a focus group, you would, because as things came up, you could address them if you were left with any questions. So I think that that would be great in the future. And then really, I think that whether or not intent of harm, repetition, and power imbalance need to be included are worth further study to really figure out if that should be a part of what we're measuring. And that's all I got. Questions? Does anybody want to share their impressions of cyberbullying? Not so much? How about you?
I don't have it's a question. So,
Okay.
if you had to do this over again,
Mm-hmm.
you could redesign the study,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do differently? Or would you do anything different?
Oh, stop. I would do a lot of things differently. One of the things really, I wanted to get a better idea of the qualitative experiences of cyberbullying. So like, who's doing it? Are you bullying strangers? People you know, both? I had some good questions, but unfortunately so few people answered them because only that 12% had endorsed cyberbullying, and they were all subsequent questions. So it's one of those things, if you answered no, skip to the next one. So it really left me with not nearly enough of that kind of data. I was interested in motivations, but so few people answered, but the few who did indicated revenge and boredom more than anything. So I think that that's definitely at play, revenge and boredom. Yeah. Wanting to express inner feelings was another one that I saw on more than one. But yeah, I really didn't collect as much of that as I would have liked. And I think a better approach, were I to do it again, would just be after the behavioral scales, just have follow-up questions, have experiences with communication technology, made you feel this way, that way. And yeah, that would have been a better way to approach it. And really, it's such a small sample size. It was just 67 people in a convenient sample. So it's more of a pilot study, really, than an in-earnest learning what we need to know kind of study. So definitely, like in the future, change the instrument a bit to get more information and do it with a bigger sample size so you could actually generalize it,
Would you factor in websites where you can anonymously bully, like Tumblr and 4chan, if you did a later study? So like, ask people more questions about have they sent hurtful messages without having their face on them, like Facebook would have?
Yeah, I didn't specifically address any of the venues, which was kind of deliberate because technology changes pretty quickly. So and I did, in the actual data collection, I asked them to name venues and write them out. So you would, so just wherever that was happening, some people would indicate that that they had experiences, like you hear social networking sites, of course. But yeah, everything changes so fast, so it's just like, you tell me what you do, So, but yeah, it can happen anywhere, and there's some pretty grisly sites out there. There really are. Anything else?
Do we definitely see a trend that it's become more prevalent in adults as the years have continued, like in recent years, because those people that used to do it as teenagers have grown, or is it just kind of stable?
It's hard to determine because, as I said, with the prevalence reports being based on different conceptual definitions, it's really hard to assess that. So you'll read a few papers that claim that that they're correlated and it does go up with age. You'll read that that's not true. You'll read that it peaks in middle school like traditional bullying tends to do and then drops off. But some people are of the opinion that unsupervised constant access to technology does cause an increase in adulthood, but it remains to be seen.
Any other questions, comments?